Okay, so you've done your stand to sit to stand test. Maybe you didn't do as good as you wanted to. I know I didn't after watching my PTs do it much better than me. So how are you going to improve that? One thing that's limiting you probably, and I know it's limiting me, is my hip mobility. So how do we improve hip mobility? So hip mobility is just your ability for your hip to move, range of motion, muscle length, all those things, capsule tightness in the joint capsule, all those things are related to that. So that's what I'm going to show you that you can work on today. So if you've been in our offices and you've had us work on your hip mobility, you've probably done this exercise or mobility treatment or modality. But basically, you're going to take a lacrosse ball, put it on the back side of your hip where those muscles are tight. Joint capsule's back there. Fascia connective tissue is a little bit tight. You're going to work in that hip and go to a spot where you feel some sensitivity. Didn't take me too long to find that. And then from here, all you're going to do is roll that hip out and then back in. And typically I'll set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes. Every 4 or 5 times I roll that hip out, then I find a little bit different spot to work on. There's a lot of soft tissue back there. So finding all the different spots that are restricted are important. So that as like a 2 or 3 minute kind of warm up for the actual stretches or mobility work is really important. It kind of beats up the tissue. A really straightforward stretch for the muscles in the back side of the hip is a seated piriformis stretch. So this will get the piriformis and also other external rotators and muscles that might be tight that are limiting that. So from here, sitting up nice and straight, leaning forward, and for me, I don't have to lean forward very far until I feel that soft tissue kind of tighten up, and I want to spend about 2 minutes in this position. You can kind of change the angle of the knee, pull it up towards you, kind of move your opposite knee around a little bit to get different areas. You can rotate your spine a little bit, and you'll start to feel that in different areas. But a good 2 minute hold for that is what you want to do to lengthen out the muscles in the back side of your hip. Other things that you can work on are working on internal rotation of the hip and external rotation of the opposite hip. So from here, you should be able to kind of sit upright. You can probably see from your standpoint that I'm leaned over this way a little bit. It's because my hips are tight. So if I have to kind of push into this a little bit to try to improve my hip mobility, I'm feeling a stretch kind of on the inside of this hip, not too much on the outside of this hip. If I leaned forward a little bit, I could feel a little bit of stretch on the outside of that hip. But basically, this is for internal rotation on this side. If I'm feeling some pull kind of the front of the hip there, again, spending 2 or 3 minutes there to make sure that my hip is moving better is going to help me out with that stand to sit to stand test. Last thing I'm going to give you is something I give a lot of people. You guys know this exercise is one of my favorites, is just a supported or unsupported full squat stretch. Okay, toes straight, knees out, getting into a position where you're getting to the bottom of that squat, the very bottom of it. And if you need support to kind of help with your balance or you don't have that range of motion, then you can use that. If you don't need support, what it looks like is kind of getting into this position here, and then you can kind of shifting side to side. I'll kind of pull on my toes a little bit to get my hips down a little bit more, shifting weight side to side, front and back, keeping toes straight, knees out, feet flat on the ground. Make sure you're working on your ankle dorsiflexion as well. But for me, those are some of the most important exercises you can do to improve your hip mobility so that you can score better on that test.